Good morning. Thanks for having me talk. I am somewhat based in Portland, but I'm currently more based in Boardman on the Greenwood Tree Farm Fund's main thing. Just too close. Maybe? Okay, not me. That's good. Is there a clicker so I can advance, or I need to hit? Oh, yeah. All right, so my talk today is going to be on woody biomass and certification programs, and I'd love to say it's going to be real rosy, but on my review of my stuff this morning, it's not going to be all sunshine and unicorns, but hopefully we'll be able to get through it. So really, when you're thinking about certifying your plantation or your biomass in general, you really need to think about, is certification right for me? Because certification has a lot of inherent, I'll call them issues. They're both positive and negative, but you really need to think about, is this what I want to do before you go down that route? Because it has a lot of indirect impacts along the way. So first is your company values or your municipality values. Do you have a commitment to sustainability? Do you value ESG, environmental, social governance? So is this something that your stakeholders or your investment group really want to value and need the third-party justification for it? So, if you value these things and you don't feel like you need a third party to tell you, to tell other people that you did it, great, you can probably just skip certification. But if you're really looking for that validity that comes with someone else saying, yes, you're sustainable, this is probably, an option for you. Kind of touched on a little bit, your stakeholders, these include your customers, your neighbors, and public perception. So if you need this to look better in the eyes of who's around you in the community, this could be an option. And again, this gets to the validity part. You need a third party to come in and say, these people do what they say they do. Certification, most of the programs have a component of risk management. By being certified, you're able to say, look, I'm mitigating my risks in terms of environmental factors, social factors, and credibility and transparency, because several of these programs have a requirement that you provide a public summary of your management activities. And this isn't saying you give them all the secrets, but they at least have the idea of what is going on and what you're doing. So these, and by being certified, you can cover these three things very easily, because if the person or stakeholders or people looking at you understand the certification program you are part of, then these are inherent in that certification. And also compatible system. When you're looking at what certification program you want to join, you need to make sure that the crop type you're growing is what's there, or even the product you're going to make at the end. And so woody biomass is a little bit of a challenge. In some cases, if you're looking to do a coppice system, your traditional things like in the US, Sustainable Forestry Initiative, or SFI, that might be an option if you're doing solid lumber. But they have a pretty tight requirement on age class, whereas if you're looking for something more like coppice system, you're really going to be stuck with fewer options. Roundtable for Sustainable Biomaterials would be one. And I've got the middle one there, conversion. Is there a pointer? That thing. Conversion here is a sticking point in some cases, because most certification programs, especially ones with strong environmental NGO backing, tend to have this cutoff date of, you can't go out and bulldoze a farm field, or you can't go out and cut down forest to replant trees. So you may have some issues about when you've created your plantation that may automatically disqualify you from the certification scheme you think may work. This is meant to be a scary slide, or maybe impressive might be the better way to say it. What we have here is certification schemes across the top. And I don't expect you to read any of these things, really. And these are kind of like components to the standards of each certification system. And so what you see here is a smattering of check marks kind of throughout everything, where if you have more check marks in your column, we'll choose this one right here. They pretty much check off all these criteria that's there. So the more check marks you have, the more stringent the certification program. And so you can also decide by looking at a chart like this, which of these things on the left-hand side are important to my organization. If I see something on that list that is really important to me, I can go across this matrix and find a check mark in a given column and say, okay, this is the program on there. So just basically this is giving you an idea. There are lots of options. There are lots of different, I guess there's lots of variability within those options. And it's kind of just a pick and choose what you think will work. So the main players in this are really 4 groups. There are more than that, but in terms of wood stock, these are what we're looking at. Forest Stewardship Council, it's an international program mostly based in Europe. PEFC, their US component is Sustainable Forestry Initiative or American Tree Farms. Roundtable for Sustainable Biofuels, RSB, that's an international program based off of FSC, intentionally meant for biomass. And the last one, International Sustainability and Carbon Certification, ISCC, is a European-based certification program, can be done in the US, but is a more industry-driven type certification program. And I have this thing at the bottom crossed out, Council of Sustainable Biomass Production. I'm not convinced it's quite dead yet, or fully dead, but it really has fallen off in the last few years as being a viable certification scheme. And so they really were developing the standard, I guess, late 2000s into early 2010s, and really just kind of got bypassed and lost a lot of support they had through that process. So here I've got kind of the 4 main players parsed out and kind of the advantages you have or disadvantages of each one here. So if we start with the top left, FSC, it emphasizes forest. So if you're looking at a solely coppice system, FSC is probably not for you. In fact, they'd probably tell you, go somewhere else. They have stand age challenges. They're still working on this. How long is a rotation length that's too short for us to include? And they have region-specific standards. So if we take the US, for instance, there are specific standards to the southeast. They're really concerned about non-native species being in the southeast. So if you have a stand of, I'll say, hybrid poplar or willow that's is not crossed with the native species there, you would not be able to qualify for FSC. Going to the right, forest, PEFC or SFI. In the US, there's a forest emphasis, and so they are also looking for stands that are 20 years and older. I've opened up the discussions with them about what they determine a stand is. Is it the root mass age, or is it the standing timber? They weren't really happy to have that conversation, so I was more or less told to wait until 2019, and when they reevaluate their standard in 2017-18 for the 19 standard, there are rumblings they want to include biomass in that new standard, but they're not convinced it's going to happen. So nothing's going to happen before 2019. More likely, probably nothing before 2025. Bottom left, RSB. This is a great program because it takes any feedstock. When they started out their pursuit, they did not really think about woody biomass. And then they started out in about 2011, 2012. Greenwood Tree Farm Fund wanted to certify biomass in conjunction with the AFRI grant that Greenwood was a part of. And we inquired to them and said, oh, I guess we'll change it from biomass to biomaterials. So now their title is Roundtable for Sustainable Biomaterials. They have a greenhouse gas component, which is nice. And they also are really game to do any feedstock that's out there. They're really accepted. But it is this stringent, has a very stringent standard as well. Looking to the right, ISCC, this is again takes any feedstock. It's very business friendly. So it kind of is not as restrictive in what you can do, fewer chemical restrictions, fewer set-aside restrictions. And both these bottom 2 are EU Red certified. So if you're selling into a market in Europe, or EU Red is one of those transparency, credibility things you want to hit, both these programs will kind of fit your bill. Okay, so certification reality, poplar and willow. This is kind of putting the square peg in the round hole. A lot of the certification programs aren't really thinking on this level, especially in the US. Europe is well ahead of us in this regard, but in reality, short rotation woody crops don't really fit real well. And so you need to find a certification program you want to go for, and also find the third-party auditor that's willing to work with you in a slightly non-typical format. Which is possible. They are out there. And so you just have to think outside the box a little bit when you're presenting these materials. The other thing is, I will say it's expensive because really there's not a lot of market for, there's not a market premium for the certified material you're selling. And anything more than what you're doing is going to cost you money no matter what you do, right? So if you go from non-certified to certified, there's just an inherent cost of certifying. But the two costs here that come out is a direct cost. It's going to cost you money to pay a certifier to come and say you're following the standard. And that's really not going to change based on how many acres you have. So if you have 20 acres, you're probably going to spend about the same amount of money as if you have 20,000 acres. So that cost is just fixed, just people's time. You know, they have to get through these things. The indirect cost is once you join these programs, many of them have upkeep. So you've got to provide the materials to show what you're doing on an annual basis. They have certifications annually or multiple times within a year, depending on your risk factors. So just some things to think about is, you know, you may not fit, and then on top of that, it's this added cost that's hard to recoup unless you really can say, we need this transparency and credibility for your stakeholders, neighbors, or investors. The other thing too is there are benefits to this. You can increase your biodiversity in some things. You have to start monitoring these things with almost all the certification programs. They want to know what you bring to the table, how you're adding things, how you're enhancing the environment. And depending on which one you choose, you could end up with set-aside areas, which are here and here. These are from Boardman, which is FSC certified and RSB certified, but FSC requires a 10% of your land holdings to be not in production. So it's a challenge, especially if you have small acres. You know, you want to maximize your return by using all those. You can find other places maybe to use like a mitigation potential, but really, you know, there is that other added cost. One of those indirect costs. You know, you're going to have to take some area out of production most likely, or pay someone else not to produce something for you. And we'll just kind of end here with the certification process for those of you who may not know it. This is, you got to complete the application. After you've figured out what you want to do and who you're going to choose and go with, you've got to complete the application. This is often registration, which will cost you money, self-assessment, indirect cost, and a greenhouse gas accounting, depending on which one you choose. But you know, this is pretty easy. You know, we talk about life cycle analysis stuff. You know, things are out there, and the UK has a wonderful GHG calculator that you can use that fits pretty well with woody biomass. So after that happens, the auditor conducts a document review, cost. The auditor conducts on-site cost assessment. Both those are pretty much fixed costs. No matter how many acres you have, that's what's going to happen. Auditor issues non-conformities. If they find them, you're not following the standard somehow, you get a list of things to correct. They issue the certificate if you're in conformance, and then every year they come back, which kind of repeats this document review and on-site assessment each year. So I think that's about what I have. And I guess I can take questions now or in the forum. It's up to you, moderators.
Go for everybody.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.